Okay, all right. So let's begin. So welcome to September class, guys. In this class, we are learning how to create a little bit of contrast, but keeping things extremely loose and light, almost like a base painting for your loose florals. And the beauty about this is you can either choose to leave things loose on this level, or you can go in and add more detailing like we've been doing in some of the previous classes for this. So let me just quickly walk you through supplies. So the first part of the class is practice. So we're using our Canson watercolor paper. That's what I have over here. This is Canson XL. For brushes, I have suggested using the Davinci Mop #1, the round #6 by Princeton Neptune, and then a round #1 or 2 miniature. But I have mine by Zen Art Supplies. So the idea with using the mop is that it holds a lot of water. It kind of gives you those really nice loose organic shapes. So if you have something else, if you don't have the mop, but you have something else like, I don't know, let's say the oval, anything that is a bigger brush holds a lot of water, feel free to use that. Or even something like this, like you can see this is a 10, but this is a very sort of thick brush. I think that should work as well. Okay, so that's for brushes. I've got water handy. For my colors, I'm using my White Nights, which is right here. And I believe for what we're targeting today, we're doing the indanthrine blue, violet, yellow ochre. Just switch my screen real quick because I can't remember. Ruby, and then chromium oxide for the green. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Let's start off with swatching, and then we'll get right into testing out how we can get the loose stuff and how we can get some nice thicks and thins, by switching out the brushes. So I would use the #6 to start mixing. Let's start mixing the blue first. So here's my indanthrine blue. And I'm just going to get so many things on my table here. So start mixing, guys, and let's do a little bit of a swatch at the top. And this way we have an idea of how things are going to transition on our sheet. So here's the indanthrine blue. And feel free to swatch it in whatever shape or form you want to. It doesn't have to be a rectangle, be a circle, it could be a flower. I'll leave that up to you. Okay, so this is indanthrine blue. I'm going to do it actually at the bottom of the sheet just so that I can have my colors on screen and you guys can see me mix. And let's start off with doing it over here. So I'm just pressing down on my brush and just lightly going back and forth. And then if you really want to see how dark this color goes, just get color from the color cake and add it at the top. And really dab it into what we've done here so you can see how that sort of dries up. And then you can take your mop, get some water on it, and just kind of add a little bit of a stroke down here, and immediately it pulls that color down. And so you can see how it looks on a lighter scale. Okay, so that's great. We've got dark to light. Let's carry on for the next color, violet. So I'm going to get my violet right there. I'll mix a little bit in my palette because I know we're using these colors for our practice. So again, just going in and going back and forth to kind of get that nice lay of color. Get some from the color cake and dab it at the top. Again, just to sort of see how it is darkest. And then going in with my mop I'm going to do the same thing that I did for the blue and kind of drag the color down. And this way we get a nice dark to light, so we can see how that looks. Now I had too much water, so I had too much water on this. So when I laid this down, it's puddling. And that's what happens. It's not giving me that smooth transition. You can see how it's almost like a little bit of a puddle here. So I'll just maybe add some in the puddle itself, and this way it kind of will disperse and show us what it looks like. These two kind of go together nicely. That might be a nice mix. Next thing we're doing is ruby, a nice bright red. Again, we're doing the same thing. Going in and adding a nice smudge. And you know, when you're doing your swatches, like this is also like you're loosening up time. So make sure you're really pressing down the full length of your brush, kind of going back and forth, because you're not really trying to aim at creating a certain shape or anything quite right now. So allow yourself to loosen up during this process too. Going in with the mop, making sure I don't have too much water. I'm just going to lightly create these little water strokes in there, bringing down the color from our ruby. Now I know it gets a little darker, so I'm just dabbing more of that ruby at the top so I can see exactly how dark we can go. All right, so the next one I believe we had was yellow ochre. Now this is not as bright typically, I find, as the others. And by bright, I mean opaque. Opaque? Yeah, it's a little more see-through, I find. So I'm going to get the color directly from there. Maybe mix a little bit on the palette. And here we go. Swatching that beautiful contrasting yellow. So lots of great options to do with our paints over here. You can mix some of the yellow ochre with the ruby to get more of an orangey shade. You can mix some of the indanthrine blue with the violet to get a different variation of that color. What else? You can mix some of the ruby with the violet as well. And again, I think you would get maybe more of a jewel tone, although the violet itself is a jewel tone, but maybe you could get more of a reddish wine purple. Okay, so that's that. And then finally, we've got chromium oxide. Like a nice lightish green. And then again, I am holding down my brush sideways and then just going to go. Oh, we've got somebody else coming here. And we're just going to go back and forth. Swatch this out nicely. And I'm just going to do this to bring down the color. And we're dabbing color directly from the color cake at the top again, just to sort of see the darkest version of it. And then we see how it transitions into lighter color when we go in with the mop and just add a couple of water strokes, pulling it down. Welcome, Travis. I'm so sorry. I know it's probably under someone else's name. Okay, we're just swatching colors right now. And if you have the workbook, the colors are mentioned in the workbook. We've done indanthrine blue, violet, ruby, yellow ochre, and then chromium oxide. I just want to quickly check, am I missing another color? Nope, that's it. Okay. So these are all the colors we're using today. I think it's a very pretty palette. And as I was mentioning already, feel free to, if you don't have the exact colors, feel free to pick something similar to these and work on that. Or if you have another color preference, you're free to use those too. In terms of actually using these colors for today, we can mix a little bit of the blue with the violet. We can mix some of the violet with the red. We can mix some of the yellow with the red, and we'll get some really interesting shades as we go along. So if I end up doing that because I'm swept away and inspired, I will definitely let you guys know, but you guys should do the same as well while we're practicing. So now we're going to move on to doing our practice session, which is going to involve learning how to do the loose strokes so we can just get these kind of really loose shapes happening. So let's do a couple of exercises. I'm going to use the top half of this sheet over here to work on that. I'm just going to pull my sheet down. Keep my color palette over here, Andy, and then maybe just keep this showing so you guys can see it. Okay, so for the brushes for this portion, I would like to use the biggest brush just so we are getting used to using a brush that typically holds a lot of water. And sometimes when you go and do a stroke, you know, you'll find because it holds a lot of water, there's a little bit of puddling, kind of like what happened to me over here. And the more you use this, the more you'll learn to recognize when there's too much water, when you should be dabbing on your paper towel or your cloth, whatever you have, just to kind of take that excess water out, then laying you down. So this would be a great exercise to get to that stage. Okay, so so we're focusing on very loose florals. What I want you guys to keep in mind is we need to make sure we're very intentionally leaving a white space in between. Because if this flower, for example, did not have any white space in between, it would look like one big blob, kind of like what's happening over here. But the saving grace for this flower over here is that, yeah, I went over and made it one big blob, but I did a second round of strokes over it. So you can see a darker color kind of just adding some depth or some detail to an otherwise just plain organic looking blob. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'm going to start off with using the choices. I'll start off with using the Indanthrine blue. I'm going to get it nicely on my mop brush. So I know I've got a nice light version of it on here because the brush has water in it already. And this is about a 30-70 mix. And we're just going to practice doing strokes that involve starting with the tip and then pressing down and kind of trailing off, okay? So just like this. So I'm going to do one right here. So we're using the tip, pressing down, trailing off. And then just kind of holding the brush slightly higher and then kind of adding a couple more details and then really pressing down the brush to kind of move the color around, get that open-ended finish to it. And so if you guessed it, here it is. This is going to be the center of the petal. And what I'm doing over here is I'm just adding a couple of jaggedy edges here. What that does is when you go around and create more petals, it'll give you this effect here. Okay, so that's why I'm trying to add a couple of strokes at the bottom and then kind of really just giving some shape to our petal here. And again, you can see me adding another stroke, and I'm just lightly grazing. I'm not pressing down anymore. Okay, so let's do this again. This time, I'd like to try it the opposite way. We're going to start from out, going in, because I think different people have different preferences when they do things like this. So we're going to try it all so you guys can figure out what you prefer. The main concept behind this remains the same. We want to press down on the brush. We want to be able to use the full length, width, whatever of the brush, instead of just using it like a pencil and just, you know, writing or painting that way. So pressing down, I'm going to hold it sideways this time. Pressing down, I'm going towards the center and get more color. And now using the tip, I'm going to lightly add a couple of strokes, like a thin stroke over there, leaving white space. I'm going to do another stroke over here. And this is helping me create a more defined edge for my petal. And then I'm just going to complete it by adding a few more strokes. Notice my white space that I'm leaving over here. So I've got a little bit of white space here. I've got a little bit of white space there. You want to go in and very intentionally add those little strokes at the bottom. You can do that now. And you always want to push all the water down to the center. Okay, just like that. Let's do it again. This time I want to show you what it would look like if I did it as a blob and then we went in and added some color, because it looks like a blob. So no white space. So let's start from the outside in, same thing. So I'm pressing down, going all the way in, pressing down, going all the way in. And there's no sort of jaggedy edge. It's just one big blob, pushing down all the color. I'm just kind of giving my petal a shape. Okay, so now this is one big blob. How do we add a little bit of detail to it? Kind of like what I was showing you previously. This is very much like the swatching we do as well. So I'm just going to take my number 6, and I'm getting some indangerine blue directly from my color cake. So it's a very dark version of it. Now I can tell you right now, when I add this stroke on this side, there's some pooling of water happening here. It is not going to flare up, I promise you. If I add it here, it'll give me a little bit of a flare up, but over here, it won't. So here, I'm just going to add that. You see how it immediately does that cauliflower effect. If I add it here, you see how it's doing it at the top, but it's kind of just sitting over here. Now I pushed it down, so it's kind of flaring up some more. But that's what happens when you have a blob. I'm going to show you a blob. So let's take a brush here. A stroke here. So this has a lot of water. So I'm just going to do this. So there's a lot of water here. Let me just zoom in so you can see. So you can see how it's kind of, the blob of water is kind of collecting down at the bottom. If I take this brush that we have majority of the color on, and I just do this, what's happened is I've moved the water, so it's giving me that flare up there. But this is not what I want. What I want is something more like this, maybe like a linear line for detail in there. This is more of a, it's pooling, and then because of the way I laid down the stroke, it's kind of, the water kind of shifted, but it's not quite the effect I'm looking for. So again, if I go over here, do you see what it does there? It started off thin, and then it's giving me like a circular kind of flare, not what I want. And again, the reason this is happening is because there's too much water. And what I always like to say is, this is where you can come in with your paper towel and you can dab and take some off and maybe save it. But when I say save, I'm very loosely saying save, because this is a loose style of painting, guys. So you can mask mistakes like this and make them work for you. So it's just a matter of getting that experience and knowing how and where. Or so you can use paper towel and kind of lift some off, or you can take another brush. This is where I like to keep extra brushes handy. I'm just going to use the miniature brush. Make sure it's damp, and you can swipe color off. So you can just take it off and you can help the color move along. So I can even give it like that jaggedy effect at the bottom at this point. And I'm using a thinner brush, so it's giving me more control over how it looks. Now, if you rewind this video when you guys watch the replay, you'll notice how when I first added the detail over here, it didn't look like this. But then the water settled and things moved around, and now we almost have like a blob happening here. So that can also happen. Again, you can go back in and lift color off. And you can even create like white strokes or detailing in the petal in this manner. So you can see how it almost looks like detailing in your petal. So you can make mistakes like this work for you. You just need to know these little, what would I call it, tips, I guess, that you can use or experiment with while you're doing it. Mistakes, you always learn from mistakes. There's always an opportunity. It's just a matter of knowing that that's not the end of the road. You can do something to it. Either swipe some color off, add a little bit of another color if you want to. Here we go. Let's just try that. I'm gonna get some violet. I'm gonna use the same thing. And if I just go adding some strokes of violet at the bottom of this, because it's damp, okay? I'm only using this petal because it's damp. And I'm just adding a couple of like loosey strokes at the very bottom to give it that jaggedy edge, but with a darker color. And I'm lightly kind of trailing off at the top. I'm not doing this. I'm doing this. So you can see how it intensifies and does a little bit of a mixture here that you typically wouldn't get if you just left it. You see how all the other ones have dried up. And this just bumps things up. Okay, what I'm going to do is open the floor up for any questions based on what I've said so far. And if not, I would like us to sort of use the rest of the page to just create individual petals, or, you know, like a full flower like this if you want to, whatever floats your boat, and try this, leaving white space, adding a little bit of extra color, everything that I've pretty much spoken about. And I'm going to sort of do the same thing as well. So any questions? Anybody? Pretty straightforward. Yeah, Kim?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not as good with loose florals. That's my downfall. So
That's why we're here. That is why we're here.
It's the paper though. If I pull out my really good paper that I love so much, those flowers will look a lot different than they do on this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The kind of paper also makes a huge difference. I just like to use this when it comes to techniques, so people can get the brush strokes in, they can practice their brush control, water control, all those things. I do realize all of that works differently with nicer paper. You don't have to work as hard, but once you get the practice in, then you can kind of go in and use expensive paper, because I know it's expensive. It racks up.
I'm trying to figure out the mop brush though. I've got a few here. I have a number 12, Winsor Newton.
Use whichever one you like.
I've never really used it, so.
Oh, then use it. This is the perfect opportunity. Use it.
Okay.
As long
I
as
have others. But
right. I mean, use whichever one you want. I've got a couple too, but this is the smallest one I have. And I think it's great to sort of practice with a small brush that holds a lot.
okay, so the 12 is small enough? See,
Sure. Yeah.
the number 12. Doesn't seem small to me. It's pretty big. But that's okay. I'll figure it out.
I think, listen, it's just for practice. I just want you guys to get used to using a
Okay.
brush that holds a lot of water, and how do you control that in your strokes when you're doing this?
Okay.
Because those are the brushes that are the best for loose florals. Those are the ones that give you those nice organic shapes that I was showing you here, and then you can just run with it. So while you guys are practicing, I'm also going to suggest as we go along, here's something else that you can try. So I'm going to use the next color. I'm going to use the ruby. Let me get some ruby on my brush here. What I'm going to do next is similar to what happened here. However, I'm starting off with adding a couple of really dark strokes of purple or violet, sorry. And I'm mixing the two. So here we go. Violet on my number 6. And I'm just going to do this. Little strokes like that. Now I'm taking my mop and I'm going to start with the violet and drag up. And I'm almost like dragging the color upward. I don't like the jaggedy edge, so I'm going to work a little bit to kind of make it more like a edge of a petal that I like. And now you have a blend of two colors. Because the amount of ruby that I have on this was very watered down, and this is a very intense color, the violet sort of took over it. However, you can see a hint of like pink in the water here. So play around with something like this as well as you're, you know, mastering or practicing your petals. And like I mentioned, you can go from the out in or in out. Obviously for this one here, you want to touch what we've just laid down here and then go in. So I'm going to do this again and get a little bit more of that ruby as we're practicing. And let's just do it here at the bottom. So just little dabs of the violet, and then taking my mop with the ruby, I'm holding it higher, and I'm just going to lightly touch that and take it up. The way that looks, I can tell it needs a little bit more water, so only the tip I am dipping in water and getting another stroke, like pressing down and then just kind of allowing it to flow, and then just lightly fixing the top of it to suit my taste of, I guess, the end of the petal. Now, if I wanted to complete this, I could just getting more of the ruby, just kind of going around. Notice there's no white space here. I'm going to show you guys exactly what it looks like if you just paint without the white space. We've done that there for one petal. Now this is a whole flower. I'm trying to push most of the color downward. We don't want to overwork these pushing colors too much because it will dry off looking like it's been overworked. So just a couple of strokes if you see too much of it collecting in a certain area. Okay, so now this is like one blob. However, the saving grace is these were lighter, these were slightly darker, these were additionally darker. So you can take some of that purple and add a little bit of detail, kind of like what I did here with this one. And so say I wanted to make this petal look like its own, so I'm just going to go in and add something like that. And then maybe go in here in the opposite direction and add another stroke. And the reason this works or sort of works right now is because these areas are damp. So what it's doing is it's sort of blending in with the color we previously laid down. This area is not damp, so you can see as I'm putting it in there, it is very dry and it's not giving me that blending effect, which again is, it might be something that you're looking for. Try it out and see which is more to your liking. You can use both to sort of formulate your flower ultimately. It's just a matter of what are you looking for? Are you looking for super loose? Are you looking for a little more detail over the looseness? And they both work equally well. So I'm going to practice the whole swiping off color now, because as time is moving on, this is just kind of flaring out even more, and it's looking like a purple blob almost. So I'm just going to take my miniature brush, and I can tell like this V over here, this could be like where this is one petal. So if I just go in and just lightly press down and swipe off color, this might help create a division and help me kind of make it seem like it is a different part or detail to the flower. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that when you swipe off color, when I'm swiping off color, what I'm doing is I am dabbing it. Oh, what's going on? Oh, battery. Sorry, guys, 1 second. You just changed the battery. All right, here we go. Yeah. So as I was saying, so when I do a little bit of a swipe, taking color off, I always go and dab it on the paper towel or your cloth or whatever you're using, and then maybe even wash it off, because what happens is when you're swiping color off, there's color on your brush, and if you use that same brush without wiping it off and go and do another swipe stroke, then you're actually applying color as opposed to taking out color. So that might not exactly be very helpful. So get into the habit of realizing, like, as you're swiping color off, you need to make sure that you're also washing it off the brush before you go back in and do another swipe. So I've done quite a few swipes on this flower. And now this flower almost looks like there's several petals happening in there because of the light and dark. And again, like, because this is such a forgiving style, like, you don't need to, what's the word? You don't need to, like, this is not photographic. This is not a photographic style of painting or anything. You don't need to make sure that it is pristinely exactly like a flower. We know this is a flower. And if you had a bunch of these with loose leaves and stuff flying all around, that is a loose style of painting, really. So keep that in mind as you are looking at it as a single flower and not, you know, combined with leaves and things like that. I'm going to proceed and do my next one. It's now 11:51. Let's spend more time practicing with all the other colors as well. Let's see what we get during our practice session. So I'm going to get, this time I'm going to use, so we've got all these three colors. I'm going to do a little bit of mixing. So I'm going to mix the violet with the ruby. And get this, get like a purpley wine color. Now it really depends on the ratios that I'm using as well. So it won't look exactly the same every time I mix this because I'm not quite measuring it to the T, but I'm just loosely mixing it to get another variation. And because these are the colors we're using, right? And what I will do is use my number 6 to get some yellow ochre. And I'm going to do the yellow ochre for the center. Oh, I didn't wash this brush off properly. Second. So I'm getting the yellow ochre directly from my color cake because I want it to be nice and dark. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a flower kind of like with this technique. So just doing it all around. There we go. Just doing these little lines, haphazard in a circle. And then I'm doing a little bit of dotted thing just in the bottom here. What I'm going to do is start doing my petals from inside out. Also making sure I don't have too much water. So I'm just lightly brushing the side of the page. And then pressing down, trailing off. Okay, that's, you need more color through. And what I'm doing is as I'm starting from inside out, I'm also kind of bringing a couple of like loosey, thin, using just the tip of my brush, using thin strokes to sort of bring some color down as well to the center. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So my preference is when I'm doing this style from the center going out. You could absolutely go from out in as well. What I love about this technique is I get this beautiful blend of the yellow ochre or whatever color you're using for the center in with my petal color. And so it's just so subtle and whimsical and loose. That's a huge part of the loose style. So this time I'm going to try doing a petal from outside in, touching. And then just loosely adding like little straight lines or strokes on the outskirts of the petal here. Again, leaving it to the imagination of the viewer that, okay, maybe those are extra petals off to the side, what have you. Do one more here. I'm pressing down on the full length or sorry, width of the brush. And notice as I'm creating more strokes here to create this petal, there's a jaggedy edge or jaggedy sort of inner bit happening here. So take your time doing these. You might not want to press down on the whole length and create the whole thing all at once every single time. But now that this is done, if you look at this flower as a whole, all of a sudden now you've got details in your flower that you didn't intentionally mean to have. These white lines almost work like shadows or highlights in your petal, giving it a little bit more definition. And you didn't really have to work that hard for it to begin with. All you had to keep in mind was make it a jaggedy edge. Make it a jaggedy edge at the bottom of the petal. Same thing here. So let me just show you how I did that petal again, because this might be more to people's liking. Just gonna dab a little bit more of that ochre before I show you, because I really love how that ochre looks with this. Okay, so petal. So I'm holding my brush like this. I'm just kind of pressing down, going, and then going towards, when I press down, pressing the full length, and then I'm going to the tip of my brush. I'm going to dip the tip of my brush in water. I'm going to do this again. And I'm leaving space in between the two. I'm going to do another one here. And again, I'm intentionally leaving this groove of space in there. Same thing here. Same thing there. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit of violet on this brush now and do a little bit more of this. Pressing down and then trailing off on the tip. Notice the white space in between. Again, I am pressing down and then trailing off on the tip. This is what's giving me those jaggedy lines. And also giving me strokes that are way more uneven and organic looking than any of the previous ones. So I'm going to just go all around and alternate with my colors. All right, last side to close off. And there we go. So now we have what very clearly looks like a loose flower, and all we did was repeat the same strokes all around. Let's do more, because I think when you kind of intentionally do this as a practice, you automatically get the hang of white space, several tiny strokes, pressing down, trailing off on the tip. Those are important things to be doing or learning. So I'm going to do one more. This time get a little bit more of that ruby. And then start off here. And again, the first one I'm pressing down and trailing, and then I'm kind of adding strokes where I'm not pressing down. So I'm getting lighter, thinner strokes to the sides, flanking on either side, you could say. I'm going to do the same thing here, pressing down, going in, and then lightly adding additional strokes that very intentionally have the white space in between. And I'm kind of now, because we've got so many colors mixed in, I'm alternating between the colors that I have mixed on my palette, between the two right there. I'm actually gonna zoom out a bit. Okay. Same thing here. You just want to be loose about the whole thing and allow the brush and the color to do most of the work. I'm going to get some of the indanthrine blue now. Add some blue to our mixture. Let's have one here. Now, if you want the tip of your petals to be a little more rounded and not as raggedy looking or jaggedy looking, then obviously when you're laying down your colors, just your first petal stroke, just kind of help it along to be a little more smooth looking. I'll get more blue and possibly add some violet to it. Let's get a nice bright one happening. Actually, while I have the blue on my brush, I'm just going to dab some to the center of this flower just to sort of see what happens. You know, use this practice time to kind of experiment with all these techniques that I'm talking about or asking you to try, because this is the way you will figure out what you like, and experience is the best teacher, in my opinion. I'm going to get some violet and mix that in with my Davinci blue. This is a dark color. Okay, and do some over there at the top. Notice how I'm kind of trying to make the edge of my petal more to my liking. And one more. I'm just going to allow us to practice a bit without speaking too much, but feel free as you're practicing. What time is it? It's now 12:04. Feel free to sort of ask questions, because now's the time as you're doing this and kind of loosening up and getting the hang of the technique and whatnot. If you've got any questions, or if you're experiencing something that you're not sure if it looks right, let me know and I can definitely have you take the floor and we can address it.
It looks like blobs. No
Hold
matter
on.
how hard I try.
Let me add the spotlight. Oh, show it up one more time. So those look really nice, Kim. My comment is, if you feel it's looking like blobs, what have I said about making sure it doesn't, like you need to add this in so it doesn't look like a blob? If you look at it right now, what do you think you need in there?
To toss it in the trash and get to start again.
No, I wouldn't toss it in the trash, but you need a little bit more white space. So try and intentionally leave white space between your petals. So in a manner of speaking, you're controlling where you place your petals. So there is a gap in between and you are getting more of that
Okay.
white space. And if you're still not able to, remember what the other comment I made to sort of fix it or save it or experiment with it is, go in with darker color and give it a little more of that. So you either add to it or take away, depending on where you are.
Take away trash. Because it just looks horrible. I look at it going, oh my word, it looks like it's
Well,
awful.
remember, it's your practice sheet, right? You got to practice.
Well, I am practicing and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse.
I only see 3 flowers, so you got to keep going. You got to just keep going. Do one, carry on with the next. Listen to the white space bit. add darker color if you want to. See what that looks like. But those look good. I'm not lying to you. If it looked bad, I wouldn't say anything. That's how you can read me.
Okay.
Okay, keep going.
That's why I get discouraged, because I loose flowers are just, there's another one of the ladies that I follow, and she does all kinds of, she's doing a whole thing. We did
You
it
did
was
a
a flower shop, and I had to sketch it.
right.
I was able to sketch that whole thing. It looks beautiful. I haven't painted it yet, but it's beautiful. And now she has the bakery up, so I have to do it. So it's going to be a whole series of like a little town.
Right.
And I thought, well, if I can sketch it, that's great. I could only
Yeah.
do 2 people a
It's a
few
step-
months ago.
It's a step-by-step process, right? Like you need to
Yes.
sort of slowly dip your feet in, and then the more you do, the better you become. It's like I said, experience is the best teacher. So like maybe try something like this, where you're just, instead of pressing down and doing the full width of the brush, maybe you're just doing this and then adding a couple of smaller strokes beside it and leaving intentional white space. Try that.
Kim, if it makes you feel any better, I'm in blob land too.
Oh, good. We're together. I'm so excited. I don't feel so bad anymore.
Oh, you guys are funny.
I'm trying, but I've never been able to master loose flowers. I've tried so hard because I follow you and 2 other ladies, and they're just so fluid with it. And I'm going, dude, you lost me. I give up. Try something else. So when she started doing the houses, I'm like, now I can do that. And I did. And because I have been so ill, and I apologize, I spend most of my time laying down,
Right,
because and they still have not gotten any answers.
right.
I've seen every ologist in town,
Oh,
and
wow.
I still don't have any answers, and the symptoms are getting worse.
Well, great to hear, Kim.
I know it's no fun, but that's okay. I'm still here. The Lord
Yeah.
wants me here for a reason. I don't know why. But so moving on from that, I'm trying, what I did pick up was some watercolor pencils, because
Okay. Yeah.
I can sketch stuff and use the watercolor thing to turn it into a watercolor painting.
Right.
So I can lay in bed and sketch and do that versus pulling out all my paints, and because I'm not able to. I mean, the last Zoom class I had with another lady, I ended up getting violently ill. I had to stop, and
Oh, no.
oh my, it was no fun. So I'm trying.
Yeah.
I am trying, and so are the
So-
doctors.
What I would say is, like go with the flow. Like believe me when I say what you showed me, while it looks like blobs to you because you're trying to compare it to me, I can see that you're off on the right foot. You've just started doing this in terms of like based on the detail that I'm giving you. You need to listen to the detail I'm giving you. Like when I say leave white space intentionally, make sure you're leaving it. And if you're unable to, like, do it in your style and then listen to the words I'm saying and do it exactly like I'm saying to do it, then see the difference. It's all about getting these things in your mind from the start to the point where you've done it so much that it's muscle memory. You don't, like someone says, do me a loose flower, Kim. Without thinking, you do it, and that's, you've kept all those key points in mind while you were doing it, like second nature almost.
So now that blue one you were talking about, you start out on the outside, bring it in and pull it up, and then do little ones on the outside of it.
Yes, so what I did was, let me just get some color. I'm just gonna get some of that ruby this time, so it's nice and bright and red and you can see it.
I have to turn my paper, because if I don't, it's even worse.
Sure. So what I'm doing is doing my first petal, just a loose shape like that, and then flanking it with smaller looking strokes on the side where it's sort of touching, but not really.
Okay.
right? And then if you just want to go and do that around. And how many little strokes you do on the side, that is up to you. You might do one and go, oh, that's perfect. I don't need to do any more.
I love how you're able to go around. I have to keep moving mine.
Turn
can't-
your sheet. I typically would be moving my sheet around, like rotating it. But because of the camera, I don't have a lot of space on my desk here, so I just have to make do.
Ah, okay. So if I did it with the blue, then go back in with a darker part of the blue and try to.
For now, just get the strokes in with the white space. And then once you
Okay.
feel a little more comfortable with that, then you can go in, take a darker color and dab it in the center. So for instance, I just did this. I have my second brush with the yellow ochre, and I'm just going to lightly add it to the center.
Is this blue better? The one down here
Hold
on the
on
bottom?
1 second. Add to spotlight.
This,
Yes, better. But what I can see you've done is there's no white space still.
it started out with white space. It just
Yeah.
kind of.
So this is what I mean. You need to keep that in mind. Like, it's a very intentional thing. As
Okay.
you're painting, you need to keep in mind there needs to be white space. There needs to be white space. Because look at the difference between the ones that don't have white space on my sheet and the ones that do. Which one stands out to you more?
Yes, I
Like,
see
look
it.
at this, look at this. This one looks like a mistake in comparison to everything else, doesn't it?
Actually, I like it. I think it's beautiful, but that's just me. I'm out there, but yeah, I like that one. I think it's beautiful, but
Thank
know.
you. But I'm just saying, like, it sticks out like a sore thumb in comparison to the others, right?
yes.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't flow. Also, what sticks out the most to you on this page?
I think the one in the middle, the first blue one you did.
This one?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, even though it's the lightest, I wonder. Oh, okay.
I don't know why, but I think it looks more like a pansy.
Mm-hmm.
It looks
Because
really
of these
nice.
detailings, yeah. Because of the detail there, yeah.
So I just need to keep practicing in that direction.
Yeah, just keep doing that and just keep in mind white space. White space.
Okay, I'll keep trying.
Maria, do you want to show me what you're doing?
Sure. Do you
Come
have
on, Maria.
any suggestions for petal? Like, all your petals look like they're beautifully the same size. And I get where I have a monster petal and then I have.
There's nothing wrong with that, because remember, it's a loose style of painting. Also, don't obsess over the things that are, I guess internally we're trained to, oh my gosh, they don't look the same. Focus on the technique first. And then once you have that, then you can focus on the sizing. So again, just like Kim, I would say, I think you started off with no white space, but then you've got some great dark shadows happening in there. Like especially at the top one has like, that looks really nice. Yeah,
That one.
That one also looks really nice. The two of them look very nice. They're two different styles. So you got the white space for the one on the right-hand side, my right, the blue. And then the other one, you don't have white space, but you've swiped off color and then you've added darker tones. So that really bumps up the what's it called? Just it makes it pop off the page. When you look at it, when I'm looking at it, that seems to be really good in comparison to the others. Now, the second sheet that you showed me, I think that's your practice sheet.
Actually, this is the second one I've just been working on the brush stroke and trying to make them the same size.
I really like it. I like what you're doing there. Try and add a little more white space. You see how there's like white space there? I do like yours, and maybe that is your style, but just try and intentionally add more white space in between the petals. And then if you like the pointed petals, that's great. I prefer mine to be a little bit rounded, or if you want to try and get petals that are a little bit more, what's the word? like,
Petally.
like broader at the edge. Do you know what I mean? Like a poppy petal, maybe, you know what I mean? Like
Okay.
wider
Mhm.
at the edge, then you can sort of spread it around at the edge too. So then this way you're trying a slightly different flower. Yeah, but white space. Practice the white space, please.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I've got it figured out. It's
Oh,
the,
let's see.
it's the brush.
Let me see what
Hang
you're
on.
doing.
I'm starting the strokes, but to the purple.
Yes, very nice.
It's the brush.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
It's-
that is a filbert brush. Yeah.
yep.
So filbert brushes are typically the brushes a lot of loose artists use for their flowers. So experiment with those two if that is your preference. Yeah, they kind of, to me, I feel like if you use the round brush, it gives you more of the straight edged petals, unless you intentionally go and broaden the petal, which is what I was just telling Maria. When you use the filbert brush now, it doesn't have a tip, but it's wide. So you get that wide petal to begin with. That's why it makes it a lot easier to create these petals without having that super sharp edge to your florals.
Actually, this one does for some reason. I don't know if
But it's still not a point.
yes, but I do have one of the cat ones.
Yeah, that works too.
I got more brushes.
Here's the
than-
thing, as you need to just be practicing with them, or sorry, using them enough that it turns into practice, and then you automatically learn how to kind of work your way around things and make things happen. So
Okay.
that's why I like these practice sessions, because I feel like people evolve on their sheet, and it's nice to keep the sheet so you can actually tell how you've progressed.
Okay.
So just keep going, guys.
Ooh. Getting more water in that one.
No, and I still struggle with things like this at times, like especially when I'm sitting down to paint and I want to do a quick painting session. Sometimes I feel like I need to loosen up. So it's not like once you get the technique, and if you never practice, like you need to sit down, do a little bit of a warm up before you can go in and add and paint on good paper, I would say. Yeah. So once you're feeling a little more comfortable with your white space, just take your second brush and dab in a little bit of like another color in the center maybe, or, just adding it along in your strokes for the flowers or the petals. Maybe one or two petals, not the whole flower, just to kind of give it that edge. So like what I'm doing here, I'm just going to add a little bit of that purple or violet. And then just add some in the center. So to reiterate, the main strokes that we're doing, the two main strokes that we've been doing, or that will give you results like this in this class, is using your brush to get the main stroke like that, pressing down. And then you're doing one to the side to get, you're doing the thinner stroke, which is just grazing the tip of your brush to get lighter strokes. So kind of like this. And these are also the strokes we're going to be doing to do our leaves. It's literally a repetition of the same strokes for the whole thing. You're just using a green instead of a nice pretty floral color for it.
One of these days, can you just have a Leaf 101 workshop?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm trying to break it down so people see, you know, like it's literally the same stroke over and over. It's just about the color and placement that makes it what it is, you know? Like if I went ahead and did this, like these are super loose leaves, right? We're just pressing down and trailing off. If I did this same stroke in a different color next to one of the flowers, it would look like a flower bud, because I'm not going all around and doing 5 strokes. So I don't know, let me take the purple. If I just did the same thing that I did here, over here. Oh, that's terrible. I think it's a weird spot in the paper, but here, let's do it up here. Like that looks like a bud or like a background flower. And then if I added another stroke, now it looks like another little flower that's extending from this. But literally switch it out for green and do your little connecting stroke, and then it becomes a leaf. We will have that leaf session. Maria, your face is so blank.
I understand the concept. It's the execution that I seem to have the problem with.
Is it? Because you're doing the same thing for the flowers. So in my mind, I'm thinking you can do the same thing, you know, after practicing so much with the flowers, you can do the same thing for the leaf, because now you're a pro. No,
I can do one. It's when I try to do bunches that they go sideways in a hurry.
right.
Amen.
And maybe your style is to just like minimalistic. You're just doing one and you're moving on. However, I don't think that's what your style is. I think it's more, it's your internal happiness when you look at the sheet. So you're like, I am happy with the one. I don't want to see anything else that ruins the one. You need to move past that, because this is the only way you can get better, is by taking a sheet and just going crazy like this and not really caring about the results. But at the same time, you're paying attention to things like, you know, like, am I able to get nice little thin strokes? Am I able to really press down my brush and get like super coverage with my color? Oh, there's too much water here. I don't like that. Let me just dab my brush a little bit on here and try, get a little more color and try that same stroke again. Oh, that's so much better. You know, things like that. Because while you're like, we tend to obsess and nitpick about things like, oh, it doesn't look like a flower. Oh, it the sizing is off, whatever. We're losing out on other things that are also very important, which is like water control, brush control, how much color is too much color. Like the more you do, the more you gain experience with these things. And soon you'll reach a stage where you're sitting down to paint and then you don't even think about those things anymore, because you know in the back of your head, you know. But you need to acknowledge these things as you learn, because these are all milestones in your watercolor journey that help you, you know, get better. So don't be so hard on yourself. And don't be afraid.
Well, for instance, so while you were talking, I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can do,
Let me see.
obviously I didn't have green, but see, that
Hold on,
doesn't,
hold on.
that doesn't look like a leaf. right there.
Okay, no, it does. Yeah, it does. What makes you think it doesn't look like a leaf?
I don't know. I think because your leaves are all pretty and fluffy.
So I'm gonna do what you did right now. My one comment about your leaf would be the stem was too thick. But again, I can say that is brush control, right? That's what I've been talking about. Can you make sure you dab your brush enough that you get a nice pointed tip? So then you can go in, you know? So let me just do what you did for your leaf. And let me make myself the spotlight again. So I'm going to go ahead and do what you did for your leaf. Let's do it in here at the top. So 1, 2, 3, and then a thick stem. Let me do this with a thinner stem so you can see. In fact, yours didn't even need a stem because we're so loose. You could have just left it with the 3 and we're good. But the thinner stem, because I do want you guys to get the brush control down, is lightly grazing. Doesn't have to be a perfect line. And then doing that, doing this. Do you see how the thickness and the thin, like it makes a difference?
It does. Yep.
So keep that in mind as you're going, because that's what the brush control thin strokes is what gives us these thin lines. So I think maybe where you guys lose out is with the brush control when you're doing the petals, because this is what I'm assuming. I'm not seeing you guys doing it, but this is what I'm assuming is happening. I'm just going to do it in red. So I think you're doing your first stroke, and then you're instead of grazing like this, you're doing this. And then you're losing out on the white space. And when you keep on doing that, this is what happens.
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
So it is the brush control. Now, mind you, like I've said to both of you, this is not necessarily a bad thing if this is what your flower looks like. As long as you've got white space in the center, you got that little jaggedy edge, you can still make this work. Here we go. Let's try and make it work. If you just take a little bit of, I've got too much, what's it called? Violet in here. It's such a strong color. Oh my gosh. And if I just go in, now I know I have too much water on my brush, so I'm just going to make sure I take off a lot of it and get a nice tip. And then just add a couple of strokes in here. And what happens is there's a lot of water already, so I'm just kind of moving and adding an additional color in here around the edges of my petals, and it's kind of adding extra dimension to my floral, right? You know who does florals like this, minus the purple or the violet that I just added? Colors with Sue, I think. I don't know if you guys follow her on Instagram. Like her petals and flowers are very, very simplistic in the sense like she'll do, oh, too much water. Like she'll do flowers like this, just like 3-petal flowers. And then the green. That's it. And she does like a whole bunch, like a vine, and then there's different shades and colors and things like that. But it's very simplistic, and some of her open flower petals, sorry, open flowers look like this as well. It's just a big area with a little bit of white space in there and then a stem. So, you know, again, I think comparison is the worst thing to do when you're finding your groove and still getting used to like brush control and water control and things like that. So don't do that to yourselves, guys.
I did one flower with some leaves, but I don't know. It kind of looks square now
Let's
that I
see.
look at it. I don't know what happened to it, but down here with the little leaves on it.
Oh, beautiful. Love it. Very nice.
And one of the petals looks square. I don't
No,
know
but
how
that's
that
great
happened.
though. That's really nice. Look, I got a square here too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
I'm
beautiful,
not the
Kimberly.
only square in the group.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. And what I want you to do, Kim, is just go back and do more all around, just like that. Don't look at me. Keep going, girlfriend. Pick up the brush. Go.
All right, so get my regular paper and start playing.
What time is it? Yeah, let's do it, guys. 12:30. So now, again, keep it loose like we've done. Add your little strokes of leaves in the same manner. If you want me to show you the leaves more, let me know. But it's literally the same thing. And no need to think about a composition.
Now, I'm not going to do a big paper. I'm going to do my smaller.
Of course, yeah, do what floats your boat.
Because I do have this color paper, but I'm not sure how the
that's
colors
nice.
will look on
No,
it.
no. So if you're not sure, just I would use like a regular instead of wasting
am.
that special paper. You don't want to.
No, I'm good.
Over the...
All right, I'm ready to get going.
Okay, let's do this.
So
Another-
just start with any color.
Oh, yeah, whatever floats your boat, because we've practiced and now try and do mini things all over. One thing to keep in mind as well is you can repeat the same thing we've been doing just on smaller scales. So this way it looks like smaller flowers, different flowers, but using the same technique.
I'm just amazed at the difference in paper.
Yeah, you can get some really different effects for sure. So I'm like mishmashing all my colors here. Well, all my colors meaning the ones that we're using for this session. And that is to sort of bring you guys to notice how your palette could be like a whole mixture of, you know, whatever colors you're using, and to kind of use them all together in different variation mixes is sometimes very nice. doing a little bit of a splatter as well. Now I'm going into my green. I'm using the tip of my brush and I'm kind of trying to create a couple of stems in the tiny little areas that I have just added some stuff to. Just prepping myself for adding some leaves, really. Just getting some really intentionally thin lines. Then I'm doing the same strokes that we did for our flowers to get some leaf action happening. So like pressing down to get that first leaf and then going in to get some thinner looking, tinier details on the side. And then if you want to attach them to stems, you can, but you don't have to. Adding some green in between the flowers can also add some separation, so that's nice. It's really bright here, seems to be. And so if you want to also control, just like I was mentioning, you can make smaller flowers using the same technique. If you want to control the sizing of the leaves that way too, then that adds a nice variation. Notice how I'm like, as I'm kind of adding more leaves, kind of going lighter to add what I like to say or call fluffing, so that the outermost leaves aren't the darkest, but we've got some nice gradients happening. And then tinier ones, just kind of like peeking out from the flowers. And they're, I mean, for lack of a better word or description, you're just doing little dabs of green. And allowing the shape to just form whatever the brush is giving you. I'm just going with that. And then I'm going to use so this is where you can use the same strokes that we've been doing so far and just use a different brush to get a different result. So I'll use the number 6. And I'm going to mix I actually had some ruby and I just mixed it in with the green and I got this super dark purpley hue. I think what I would like to try is the leaves that are slightly thinner with this brush because it'll give me a thinner stroke and then just be darker. And I know I already have a lot of purple already, but I'm still gonna just try and get some thin leaves happening and let's just see what that looks like. I'm gonna connect some of these here with the purple. And let's do, yeah, this placement is everything, right? I'm gonna do some over here at the top. So let's have one kind of coming up this way. And then I'm using the tip of my brush, pressing down, trailing into this leaf right there, the stem right there. Then I'll do another one kind of beside it. I'm just going to have some of them kind of poking out in between that flower there. And over here. If I really wanted to intensify the color, make it darker, I'm just going to dab more of this color into this. And what happens is this is going to stand out more than the rest of the elements on here. Just a little bit here. Again, I'm just experimenting. Like I mentioned, I feel like there's too much purple. I mean, there's a lot of purple already, but I'm just going to go with it. And maybe you want to tie this purple with the center of the flowers. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the center of some of them with the dark purple. And then you can see the colors are being picked up. Which was the other one? Here's one more. We just like do a couple of dots in these so that they look like they're the centers. Do some there, and then you can see this flower here is like a blob, this one that I'm painting. But again, once you add a little bit of detailing to it, and with it beside all the other flowers, it doesn't quite look so much like a blob as it would if it was just like standalone, which is why I'm like, when you take a sheet, just practice, 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 just cover the whole sheet up, because 1 out of, I don't know, 20 might look like a blob, and that's okay. I wanted to do the thin stuff again. I'm gonna do it. And then, yep, I think. Do it. Protruding thing where. Now this looks a lot browner than purple. And also the shape, because of the direction I'm kind of adding, going in with the brush stroke, the shape is not as pointed as what I have above. So color is different, stroke also looks different, and that's okay. I'm going to intensify the hue just bottom of these a little bit. And I'm going to get some of that yellow ochre. And I'm using my miniature brush for this, and I'm going to highlight some of the centers. I'm getting the color directly from the color palette and dabbing away. I'm going to add some on this red flower as well, even though I know I gave it a center, but that's just feel like the ochre with the red would be nice. And then some of this purple mauve. 1, 2. Adding little hints of yellow, which is a contrasting color to some of the colors we have here. Actually dabbing some in all of them at this point, because I'm really liking the yellow. And I'm going to use this brush to do some really light versions like this with maybe leftover green or something like that. And then if you're looking to get this faded effect, all you need to do is Actually, let's do some of that first. I'll do some of that with the yellow. So I'm gonna dampen this area right here. So it's just water on my brush and just sort of loosely damping it. And making sure that there's no blobs and just taking off water. And then with the small brush, you get some of that yellow. And I'm going to do the same strokes, but on a smaller scale with these flowers. And so now, because it's damp, I'm getting a very muted, blended, blurry-ish sort of effect. While the other florals are a lot more defined, these are very much so not defined. Then as I'm going outward, I'm just going to do a couple of dots to kind of make it seem like they are buds. And then washing off my brush, I'm going to get some of that green. If you want a slightly different green, like a darker green, just so that these stand out slightly different from the others, mix it with a little bit of red, mix the chromium with a little bit of red, and that should do it. And then I'm just lightly adding tiny strokes. So I'm just grazing the paper with the tip of my brush. And this is what is, as soon as I graze it, because it's damp, it's kind of doing that flare out bit. And we're getting sort of that effect right here. So now it's blending in and not giving you like that perfect effect. But you can see that there's some background sort of florals happening. So that's one thing. And so little pops of yellow, if you did that in tiny areas here and there, would also make it bring out the yellows from the center. I know it's 1:11, but 5 more minutes. I'm just going to dampen this area here and do sort of similar thing. I'm going to wash my brush again because this is what happens here, because I did not dab my sheet. When I added my first dab, it kind of just ran into the water that way. But I'm just doing light little dabs of spaced out yellow. And so now that could almost pass for like one big flower. I'm just going to add some additional dabs to this, just so it matches the intensity of the yellow down here. And now go back in for some of that green. And just lightly adding to any a little darker green more because the water is intense. Okay, so I'm not able to get thin lines because it immediately just blends in. And that's okay. It's just all about getting hints of green, the same muted level as below in here. Why, but like on screen, it just looks so washed out. I guess it's the ISO. Here we go. I think this is better. Okay. Last little tiny bits of green that I mentioned on a light scale. So you tie everything in with thick strokes, thin strokes, big flowers, small flowers, contrasting colors, all of that good stuff. And then maybe you can end with a splatter if you want to. And these are like the dancing strokes, right? So for instance, I'm going to do a little bit over here, but I'm not connecting them fully. I'm just kind of having them emerge from there. And then doing a couple of dabs of green around it. This one looks a little bit darker than the what I intended. So same thing here. I'm going to do another one here. Getting more water to kind of really get that watered down effect. And just being whimsical and loose with your strokes. Okay. So at this point, it's like if you're holding a brush like this, and then you're just doing, I don't know, like that, getting more water, and then really pressing down on your brush to see what kind of organic shape you get. You see how it's like loose. Do some in between if you want to. Making sure it's more water, less color, and add some protruding from wherever you've got a little bit of flowers here and there. And just to kind of filling up some areas here just to tighten everything up a bit. Again, you don't have to do this because this is not part of the so-called class. This is just me adding extra. And then I'll just do one more here. I know I keep saying this. I'll just do, and I never do.
Oh, but it's so beautiful.
Thank you. So this is what I mean. Like you just get swept away and you're like, okay, I'm almost done, but no, not really. I'm just going to keep on going. This is just me tightening it up. But the main crux of this lesson was pretty much the 3 strokes that we were talking about for better brush control. I'm going to end it here. Leave it at this. This is what we have. Okay. How are we feeling?
I really like yours.
Yes, I
Thank you,
love
Maria.
yours.
Okay, now it's time for you ladies to show. So hold on, give me 1 second. Let me just,
It's show and tell time.
yes.